started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning to talk about math mindset. I'm Kathy Corbo. I'm the math coach at Proctor Elementary School.
And I'm Courtney Elliott. I'm the 3rd and 4th grade teacher at Proctor Elementary School.
And I'm going to share our slide presentation. The link to it was also in the place where you joined the meeting if you want to look at your own, but we'll be sharing it as we go. So Courtney and I are going to be talking about a math mindset, which is based on the idea of a growth mindset. Primarily, we're using the work of Jo Boaler, and Jo has a site. She's a professor at Stanford, and she has a site called UCubed that most of the videos and images that we're using this morning have come from, and they are available to you to use in your instruction, in your own professional development. Some of the videos that we'll show you are clearly made for adults, some for students to use in your instruction, and all of them are available on the UCubed site, which we will go to a little later in our presentation. So Courtney's going to get us started.
All right, so the first thing we want to think about that is of importance when we get started with this math mindset is the idea of growth mindset. So if we look at the quote here, it says, test scores and measures of achievement tell you where a student is, but they don't tell you where a student could end up. So thinking about that importance of reaching and cultivating all the learners in your classroom every single day. And the best way to kind of start there is with this idea of growth mindset, that idea that your brain is like a muscle, and that everyone has potential to do mathematics. We just need to offer them the opportunity and the practice to work on mathematics, not only at their level, but at higher levels as well. So that's why that growth mindset is super important coming into this practice. And then if we want to go to the next slide. So the next slide is around the messages that we give in math to our class. So if we think about back to kind of our own math ability or our own math experience, I guess is the better word there. A lot of us might have had a fear of math or a discouraging kind of experience with math. I know I certainly did. Math was not my strongest subject in school, and it was very intimidating. So we want to be really careful about the messages we're giving about math to kids, because especially at home, they might be hearing some negative things about math because their parents probably had negative experiences around math in school as well. So we want to make sure that we're sending the messages that everyone can learn math to the highest levels. Mistakes are valuable. Questions are really important. Math is about creativity and making sense. Math is about connections and communicating. Math is about learning, not performing. In-depth is more important than speed. So if we keep these 7 messages in mind, they're going to help us kind of build the pillars of our math mindset in our classroom. And we can go to the next slide. So our next slide goes off that first message that we want kids to be receiving, or that first pillar of math mindset, which is everyone can learn math to the highest levels. So we talk about building student achievement by building student confidence. So students, like I said before, need to be given the opportunity to do math, the opportunity to struggle through harder math problems, which we'll get to when we talk about productive struggle later in this presentation. But we need to get kids that time and that practice with math to the higher levels, and having students understand that there's no one right method or one way to think mathematically is super important here. And it goes again with those flexible pathways that we talk about in the district. Every child's kind of pathway to math might be a little bit different, but we want to make sure we're providing opportunities for all of our students to work with math at their level and at the highest levels that they can. And we do have a video that goes with this one called Brains Grow and Change.
I'm just not a math person. Math is
Kathy, I can hear it, but I can't see it on the screen.
okay. You don't have to be good at math. You can.
Okay. I think sorry everybody.
Oh no, you're fine. I think it's because we have to share the tab to avoid mirroring.
Right. So I need to stop sharing and reshare a different tab. This will get to be a little cumbersome. Sorry, everybody. But we'll do it. See it?
It's coming. There it is.
I'm just not a math person. Math isn't for me. I should just give up. Oh, it's okay. You don't have to be good at math. You can be good at other things. Did you hear what they just said? Yeah, sounds like they believe in the myth of the math person.
Damaging myth that's just everywhere?
What? You're caught in a myth. But that's okay. The Eucubians are experts at fighting myths.
Yes, we fight myths with science.
Brain science tells us that no one's born without a math brain and no one's born with one. In fact, our brains are constantly growing and changing. No one is born a math person.
Yeah, don't trap your brain in the myth. You can do whatever you set your mind to. Wow, that's really cool. It makes sense my brain can change and grow really good. Give us science! I guess I should stop assuming that some people are naturally good at math and some people aren't. I should change my message to say that everyone can do anything and your brain can grow and change.
Hi, my name's Joe Bowler and I'm a professor at Stanford. And I'm from England.
That's why I say maths and not math. Some of the most incredible brain evidence from recent years has shown that nobody's born with a maths brain and nobody's born without one, and that everybody's brains have the potential to grow and change all the time. When we learn something, a synapse fires in the brain. It's like an electric current that moves between parts of the brain. And when we return to the idea and think deeply, that synapse forms a pathway in the brain that we keep using from that point on. Synapses are firing all the time, but they don't fire as much if you don't believe in yourself, and we'll come to that idea in a later film. In recent years, there have been stunning examples of brain plasticity and growth. London taxi drivers have a really hard test that they have to study for. They have to memorize all of the routes, possible routes in London. When they finish studying for that, the hippocampus in their brains has grown. Another amazing example of brain plasticity was a young girl who had half of her brain removed, and she was having dangerous fits that doctors couldn't control. And the doctors expected her to be paralyzed for a long time as your brain controls your physical movement. But she stunned doctors as within months she was running around again. And they could only conclude that in effect her brain had regrown in a really short space of time. So always remember, you can do anything.
All right, I think we're ready for the next slide. All right, so the next slide is mistakes are valuable. So this is something that took me a while to really work on in my classroom. It's something that when I first started, I thought that getting the correct answer was the most important part for students in mathematics. That was probably something that I really thought was true. But as I kind of grew and worked as a teacher over the years, this kind of became the most important pillar of my math mindset, that mistakes are valuable. So if we look at the quote there, it says, mistakes and challenges are the best time for your brain to learn. You want to be struggling and finding work hard. When you make a mistake and struggle, your brain grows. So what it's really about here is that we want to give students the opportunity to work with higher level math problems. We want to make sure there's a part of our math block where students are working at their own level on skills that they need. But we also want to make sure that during that mini lesson or that grade level content time, all students are working on grade level content, and we're challenging students who might need more than grade level content, because our brains are only going to grow when we're challenging ourselves, when we're looking at something a little bit harder for ourselves. And something that I've talked to my students this year about is stretching our brain. I might say, all right, today's a problem today that's going to stretch our brain a little bit. Let's see if we can find an efficient strategy that's going to help us find a solution to this problem. So again, it's not about getting the correct answer. It's about the work that gets us there. And then student discussion around mistakes, and student discussion around, what do you notice this mathematician did well? What do you notice this mathematician could have changed about their work to maybe arrive at a different solution? So not so much answer focused, but kind of that strategy focus of how did the students get there? And then let's talk about it as a group. Let's learn from each other. And once you set that math mindset in your classroom, your students are going to feel comfortable and confident putting their work up on the board and letting their classmates kind of walk through it and see maybe where they made a mistake. And it's really, really cool to watch that progression over the years or over the year. And some students who might be a little bit more reserved about sharing their work or making a mistake, to the end of the year, they're the first one who wants their work up on the board, so we can take a look at their work and what we think they did well and where we could kind of pick out some mistakes they might have made. So I think we have another video here called Mistakes Are Powerful.
I've been working on this problem for so long. I just can't get it right. Every time I try something, it just doesn't work. I keep on messing up. I should just give up.
Hey, we've been alerted to this area because there's a ton of brain growth going on.
What do you mean? I've been failing at this problem.
Your brain has grown so much while working on this problem?
But I can't figure out, just been making mistake after mistake. I can't do it.
Exactly. Every time you make a mistake, a synapse fires in your brain. Synapses are connections that your brain makes every time it grows and creates new pathways.
Really?
Yeah, struggle and mistakes and challenge are great for your brain. Your brain is like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. And challenging problems are great workouts.
So I should make mistakes and struggle?
Yes, we learn a lot and have a lot of brain growth, especially when we're making mistakes and working on hard problems.
So don't give up, keep going. Some problems go unsolved for years, and that's fine. What's important is how much you learn while you're trying to solve them. Keep taking risks, keep making mistakes.
Yeah, and your mathematical thinking process is super important and awesome. So if you keep learning and making mistakes, that's what's important.
Wow, I had no idea. I'm gonna keep working, and when I make a mistake, I'll know that my brain is growing.
Many people in school feel bad when they make mistakes. There's so much emphasis on everything being correct, even though that isn't that great for brain growth.
Yeah, I know when I was in school, I really hated making mistakes.
And brain science tells us those are the best times for brain growth. Those are the times when your brain is really struggling and when you're really challenged. Those are really good times for brain growth.
That makes sense with my experience. I feel like once I stopped worrying about being right or wrong, my brain was just on fire, and in a good way. In school, I very often just felt really bad when I made a mistake because we're always told like mistakes are bad, getting work right is good. But learning that mistakes actually are when you learn means that now when I make a mistake, it's a good thing. Now when I make a mistake, it's something that I get to explore, that I get to find different ways to think about, that I get to be able to get it right later.
So don't give up, keep going. Some problems go unsolved for years, and that's fine. What's important is how much you learn while you're trying to solve them. Keep taking risks, keep making mistakes.
My microphone keeps turning off on its own. I don't know why. So on the next slide, you can all hear me, right? Okay. we're going to talk about the message that we want to give to students about questions being really important. I think as teachers, we think a lot about the questions that we want to ask students, but we also want to make sure that we're encouraging students to ask each other questions. We don't want to be the keeper of the knowledge and the one who gives all the information to our class. We actually want to think about the idea that I heard years ago that stuck with me, that the learning starts when the teacher stops talking. So we really want kids to see each other as resources, ask each other questions, to encourage each other to keep working, but also to learn from each other. So it's something that we need to really be thoughtful about. Studies show that doing math with others helps with learning, and getting together with classmates and friends to do math and discuss it helps students to learn. So often we think, well, if kids are working together, I don't know who did what part of the work, but by eavesdropping on conversations, we can learn a lot about students. The format that I like to use, that I used as a student at BMI, was the idea of presenting a problem to the class. And at Proctor, we've been using problem introduction protocols, which we find are really valuable, so that we make sure before kids start working that they understand the task. And then the next step would be to give kids an opportunity to work for a short period of time on their own, and then to get together and work with classmates. And then the last step would be to come together as a class to talk about it. So that time when kids are working together is really valuable, and we need to really encourage conversation and math discourse during that time. And that takes a little bit of practice, modeling, eavesdropping in on conversations and kind of coaching kids, but letting the majority of the conversation in the math work time be with the students and us as observers and supporters, but really doing minimal talking at that time. The next message that we want to give kids is about the idea that math is about creativity and making sense. Math is a sense-making subject. You yourself can know if an answer is right by reasoning about it. In math, there are multiple ways to solve a problem. If you finish a question, think of a different way to solve it, or pose another question. So we want kids to understand, and I think this is a big shift for a lot of people, that in math, getting the answer is not the end of the work. So thinking about looking at that answer, does it make sense? Looking at the process we use to get there. Questions like, would that work every time? Why does that work? Encouraging students to use a variety of ways to solve a problem and to see other ways. I've recently worked with kids who were very successful in using a strategy to get a solution, but had a hard time seeing it another way. So when kids work together and share, they have that exposure to other ways, which just really stretches their brain as well. Some are very narrow-minded in the sense of, I know this works for me, so I'm going to go to this every time, which gets them the answer, but we really want to stretch their brain in seeing other strategies and other models that also work. And we want to be careful not to impose our way. So we all have a go-to way of solving a certain type of problem. And we don't want to necessarily share that right away, because what we see is when the teacher shares their way, then that becomes the way to do it. And so we really want to start with student work. And if we have something to add as a part of that learning community, that would be best done towards the end of the work, so that students aren't just trying to be teacher pleasers, but they're really trying to be thinkers and learn from each other more than from the teacher. When I think about comparing this to how we teach and learn reading, we think about a student in reading who's a good word reader but has poor comprehension, and that's very problematic. So it's very much the same in math. We have students who can get the correct answer but can't explain the math, and that is problematic. So we really want to make sure that we're working towards understanding, not just getting a correct answer. And we want to encourage and celebrate when kids go beyond the task. And that's something that some kids do naturally, and other kids need really explicit instruction or modeling on how to do that. So when we finish solving a problem, we can ask questions like what if questions. What if the numbers in the problem were fractions? What if there were decimals? Would we solve it the same way? What if they were larger numbers? Would we use a different strategy? What if a part of the context of the problem changed? Then how would that change the result? So lots of ways of extending problems. And initially we might need to give kids ideas on how to do that, but hopefully eventually they would start doing that on their own. And we want to make sure that we celebrate that. The fifth message is math is about connections and communicating. Math is a subject of beautiful connections. It's not a long list of disconnected topics. And that's from Joe Bowler. So we often think of math in strands. We have, geometry and data and measurement. But if we think about the connection between them, it's very important. And I often think of using those strands that I just mentioned, like geometry, data, and measurement, as kind of the theme of and working on operations through that, so that students see the connection between all of that work. When we think about connections in reading, again, I always connect how we teach reading to how we teach math. We think about encouraging comprehension by making text-to-text connections or text-to-self connections. And so in math, we want kids to make problem-to-problem connections. As they're solving a problem, they might say, oh, this is just like the marble problem we did last week. Or they might have a personal connection to the context of the story. They can make connections, and we might have to encourage that between strategies. So if we have two kids choosing different strategies to solve the same problem, we could say, where is this math from one problem in the other, from one solution rather, in the other, and see if they can make those connections and models as well. So thinking about how are these different ways of solving the problem similar, and how are they different? So one example of that might be if one student solves an addition problem using base 10 blocks and another jumps on a number line, you can talk about where is this jump of 20 on the number line, where is that in the blocks? And so they can make those connections. So that's really important. We do have a video that I do need to do just a portion of, so I will bring that up next.
Kathy, when you play the video, you need to mute yourself, otherwise we get feedback on your end.
Oh, so you're muting me.
I've been muting you so that we would get rid of the feedback.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering what was happening. I will do that then. Thanks.
Okay.
For that.
Another top mathematician at Cornell University. He talks about doing math problems in groups and being one of the last people to solve the problem.
The reason many mathematicians are slow is that they think deeply about math. Steve talks about being excited for the first time about a math problem in high school. He then worked on the problem for 6 months and eventually solved it.
It isn't important in maths to be fast. What is helpful in maths is to think visually and creatively. Maths isn't just about calculations. They may be the least interesting part. It's actually about patterns and space, seeing things differently, and making connections.
Maya Mirzakhani is one of the most amazing mathematicians of her time, and she just won the Fields Medal. Her work is entirely visual and very creative. When she won the Fields Medal, other mathematicians talked excitedly about how she had made connections between areas of math that had never been made before.
Even though Mariam is one of the world's leading mathematicians, her 7th grade teacher told her she couldn't do math. Fortunately for the world, she met others who believed in her, and she believed in herself. And she kept going.
In school, many people get the wrong idea that faster students are better at maths. But we know that being fast doesn't mean that. Often the faster students have memorized more, but we know that better memorizers don't necessarily have more maths potential.
Are you looking at the slides now? Can you see the slides? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I went a little long in that video. Sorry. Lost track of the timing on it. So Courtney, you're up.
All right. So our sixth important principle is that math class is about learning, not performing. So what this means is that it's important to remember that learning math is about taking time and putting in lots of effort. Don't be put off by any low grade or test score. You can learn anything you set your mind to. So what this kind of means for us to keep in mind is that math is about, it's kind of a journey, not a destination. Math is about the journey students take, not so much about, like we've said before, getting that correct answer. And we have a lot of students who might feel discouraged if their work doesn't produce a correct answer. And actually in my classroom this year, I've stopped using the word answer and started using the word solution, like the solution to your problem or the result of your problem, because it takes less pressure off of kids to find something that they deem as correct, that the answer has to be correct. So we might say something like, okay, what is the result? What is your final result for this problem? And then we go back and we look at the journey that the student took to get to that point. So another important thing about this as well is that our class of learners sees us as a learner as well. So what this might look like in the classroom is if a student presents a strategy to a problem, you might say something like, wow, I never thought of it that way before. Or can you do some more explaining to your classmates about your work here? So we want to really put them in the driver's seat as the ones who have taken that journey. They're the ones who've done the problem. They, like Kathy said before, we want to make sure that student work is on display more than teacher work. I might come in at the end or come in a small group or come in a conference and present a strategy to a child, but I'm not going to present a strategy as this is the only way to do it. I might see a child using loops and groups, for example, for multiplication, and they might be making the same mistake. I might then pull that child in one-on-one conferring and ask them, can you tell me what your thinking is here? And then after I hear from them, I might go back and help them rework if they don't see their mistake, where the mistake is constantly being made in that strategy. But I'm not going to put my strategy up on the board for everyone as the be-all and the end-all. Because like Kathy said before, that's where we have students who then it becomes about pleasing the teacher or performing. I have to do it that way because she wants me to do it that way. It should be about what works best for the students. Another kind of thing I tell my students is that you have your math toolbox of strategies and that you pull from your toolbox what works for you. So if you are working on multiplication and loops and groups is your go-to strategy, you pull that from your toolbox first and you try that. And then we talk about, well, what happens when the numbers get bigger? Like Kathy said before, those kind of increasing conversations. So I might say, okay, well, this was a single by single digit problem. What happens if it's a double by single digit problem? Can we still use loops and groups or would that take us a long time? And they might say, oh, that would take us a long time. So then we might have that conversation of, okay, what other strategies do we have in our toolbox now that our numbers have gotten bigger? And they might say, oh, I could do partial product. So again, it's that idea of one thing isn't always the correct answer. And I know or the correct solution. And I know Bridges sometimes sets it up as they want students to do it in one particular way. I've always just have my students encouraged to think about it like a toolbox, that you have your toolbox, that's a strategy in your toolbox. You can use it or you can try to do it another way, as long as, again, we said they're learning. It's not just about performing and being able to fill in numbers in a specific task. And I think we have another video here called Never Give Up.
Actually, I think I'm going to skip the next two videos. I'm just looking at time and we want to make sure we have enough time on the site. So I think I would just encourage people to look at these on their own. They're all right from the UCube site. And the last message of the 7 here that we want to make sure that we give to our students in math class is that depth is more important than speed. And we heard a little bit about that on one of the videos. Many mathematicians work slowly because they think deeply rather than quickly. And we want to make sure that our focus is on understanding, not on speed. We're often impressed when people can do mental math really quickly, and it is impressive, but that's not really our goal in our math instruction and learning. So we really want to reinforce the math practices and perhaps even intentionally teach those and post those in our room. So we really, from the Common Core site, you can find those. We really want to reinforce and encourage perseverance, precision, reasoning, and we want to allow time for that. So I think one thing that I always hear is, there's so much in Bridges and just not enough time. And if you give kids really challenging problems to do, they need time. And we always feel that pressure of not having enough time. So I would just encourage you to not feel restricted by your math time. It's okay. We heard of stories where these mathematicians work on problems for months, even years. So it's okay for our students to work on problems for days. They work on writing tasks for days. They can work on math problems for days. So when we give kids a task, if they don't finish it, we save it and continue working on it the next day and the next day if we need to. We really want to encourage that kind of deep thinking and sticking with things, not feeling rushed or, all right, if we have 5 minutes left, I've just got to tell them how to do it. Really, that's not helping our kids. Even things like our launch, we use, and I'll show you in just a little bit, we use a workshop model at Proctor. And in our launch or warm up, when we run out of time, because we really want that to be 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes we can take the chart that we've built from that work and just put it up on the wall. And you might hear kids might hear them talking about it and see them looking at it during snack time or at the end of the day. So that work can continue and should continue. And we really want to encourage that. The deep thinking, taking time and giving our kids, that's our responsibility, giving our kids the time to do that deep thinking. It's not quick. And we're going to go on next to the site, and I'm going to stop sharing, and Courtney's going to get us started with that. I have not looked at the chat at all, so if there are questions there, we'll try to get them to them at the end. We'll try to have an open question time too, where you can unmute and ask questions. So we'll talk about that at the end.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, make sure I do this right so it doesn't mirror. There we go. All right, can everyone see my screen? All right, so this is the UCubed site, and this is where you can plan for, as a teacher, your week of inspirational math. Me and my 3-4 team have actually done 2 weeks of inspirational math in our classroom, and we're planning on doing another 2 weeks again this upcoming year. So what that is it's a week or 2 weeks where your students and you can kind of explore some of these math principles and these math concepts and kind of set the foundation for their math mindset throughout the course of the year. So you can really start to set the platform for these really important principles that we've talked about previously. So I'm going to show you how to do it by playlist. So if you scroll down right here, there's a little blue part that if you click, it says your playlist, and you can kind of create your days. So there's a spot for a video on each day. There's a spot for a positive math resource on each day, and there's a spot for like a task on each day. And you don't have to have all three. So for example, if we look at what day 1 is going to be for our 3-4 team, we have a video called Believe in Yourself that we're going to have our students watch. And then we have a task and a math resource. That's kind of our activity, where they're going to take a coloring page of the brain and they're going to split the brain in half. And on one side of the brain, they're going to put things that they're really confident on, or they're really comfortable with, things that they feel that they know a lot about. And on the other side, they're going to put things that they want to grow in, things that they want to work more on in this year. And it could be in math, or it could be in any kind of subject area. And then if you keep scrolling down, there's more examples. On day 4, I have an example where I have all 4 filled in. We have a video about speed is not important. We have a positive math resource that shows kids what does it look like to, or what does it mean to be great at math. And then we have a task about consecutive numbers where students can go off and work on that task together and in groups, and then come back and we can debrief and we can talk about the work that they did there, kind of enforcing some of those principles. And then this one's my favorite on day 5. I just wanted to point this one out. It's called And I'm a Mathematician. So we did this one last year, and this was the kids' favorite one. You have them like come up with a word that describes them. Like some of my kids were like, I am a biker, or I am a soccer player, or I am a musician. And then they put like a bunch of different pictures on their slide of things that make them them. And then at the end, it says, and I'm a mathematician. So then they get to share, and then they get to talk about all these things, but also I'm a mathematician, which kind of reinforces that principle that everybody can do math to the highest level. Everybody's a mathematician, not just kids who think they are math people. And how you add these videos is or these resources is, let's say you want to do a video on the importance of struggle. You just click on it, you click add today, and then you pick which day you'd like. So if I want to add it to day 3, I click day 3. I already have one in there, but it would just automatically add to there if you had an empty slate. And then you can reset it too and like start your next week if you wanted to. And my 3-4 team has it also typed up in a document. I think that Kathy's going to share one. She has an example of 2nd grade, but we also then went through and just typed everything up in a document with what day of the week are we going to do it on? What's our activity going to look like? What's our debrief going to look like? How are we introducing a part of the math workshop model here? And then what are our resources that we need? So we also have a document where all that's typed up as well. And I'm going to pass it back over to Kathy because she's going to show you another way that you can set up your inspirational math on the website.
Okay, so Courtney went down and chose her grade level down here. And another option is this old way, which you might find preferable. So it's structured in weeks and by grade levels. So I did some work with a 2nd grade plan, and you'll notice that in week 1, there is nothing for the 2nd grade. So I will jump to week 2 to show you what that looks like. It's really already, the work is already done for you. So there's a benefit here of saving you some time and creating beautiful lesson plans for you. The way that Courtney showed you, you could build it more specifically to what you want to communicate on which day, and knowing your students as well as you know them at the first week of school, what their needs might be. Perhaps you have had a conversation with their previous teacher to know what kinds of things that you want to focus on and structure it in your own way. But this is a beautiful way of getting started with this. So it really has, this is day 1, and it gives you all of the activities, which includes the time frame and the materials and links. So this is set up very nicely with everything you need for each day. I'm just going to scroll through to give you a sense of what it looks like. And I'll talk more about some of these when I show you my other plan. So everything is right there for each day. It's very handy. Oops. And I just want to show you before I show you my lesson planning sheet that if you scroll through here, if you choose the old way, or want to do anything different or find resources, for example, charts that you can use on your big screen during instruction or post in your room or share with students or use in a Jamboard or your own slide presentation or share with parents, which might be a great idea. All of those things are accessible down here, and there's more. If you go to load more resources, there's all kinds of things. So you could just explore this on your own and use pieces and parts of it how you want to, if you don't care to actually use the tools on this site. So now I'm just going to show you one more thing. So this is a plan that I started working on. It's a work in progress for 2nd grade for the beginning of school. And it's kind of a combination of my previous experience of everyday math, almost came out of my mouth, of bridges, the math block structure that we use, which includes the launch, main lesson, an independent and teacher work time, and closure. So it combines this structure with some bridges work and the idea of the math mindset. So as I showed you previously, week 1 for 2nd grade is not a math mindset week. It's kind of a getting established, setting up routines and expectations and getting familiar with materials and where things are in the room and how do I get them, how do I put them away, and the structure of the math block. So having some opportunity to establish that and practice a little bit in the first week. And when I say week, it isn't necessarily a calendar week. It might be your first 5 days or however you want to structure that. So what I did here, structured my first day of the inspirational math work into this format. And so I took things right from the site and just put them into my plan here with some links. So my launch would be perhaps a dot card activity where I show an image of some dots very quickly and ask kids, how many dots did you see? Come to consensus on how many there are. And then ask kids to explain how did they see it. Well, I saw 4 and 3 to get 7. I saw 3 and 3 and 1 to get 7. And that really starts that idea, presenting that idea of that our math brains work differently. We see things differently. We think about things differently, but we can get to the same result just in a different way. So initially starting that conversation here with a launch. And then using a video from the website and an activity from the website. This finger maze work is really interesting. It's all about the importance of finger differentiation and how students who have strong finger differentiation tend to be successful or do well in math. So if kids don't have that, it's something we want to work on. You can test that by one way we tried this in another training that I did was cover your hand and have somebody touch one of your fingers, and can you identify which finger it is? We really want kids to use their fingers. There's a lot of research around the importance of that. Used to be discouraged to use your fingers. So we want kids using their fingers. It's like a direct connection neurologically to your part of your brain that does math. So it's really important. So this is an activity around that. And you can talk to kids about that research and this fun activity, which helps to wake up that part of our brain to do math. So there's a whole group activity here to do around that idea, and then some partner work to do with that. And again, we're working on the expectations of what partner work looks like, but we're also working on the math mindset concepts and working on developing our belief that our brain can grow. And then a closure, kind of pulling it all together as a whole class and talking about what went well, what did we learn. And so each day would be set up like this using the math mindset work from the UCube site in the format of our math block. And Courtney, I don't know if you wanted to share the one that you developed. We're really about out of time, I guess, aren't we?
Yeah, I was going to say we're about out of time. I can share it with anyone who wants it. If anyone wants the example of the 3rd and 4th grade one, I'd be happy to share it if they wanted it.
Wow, this went really fast. I'm just going to go back to the slides and wrap up. So to summarize this, we really want to think about making sure that we are both in words and in our actions communicating these messages to students so that everyone feels that they are a mathematician and that they can do this. Some people need more time, and that's okay. We need to make mistakes, and that's okay. We learn from our mistakes. We really want to avoid using language like my low students or my high flyers, because that's really more of a fixed mindset language. We might avoid using the word smart and really focus on identifying the skills that we are seeing. So being really specific. I love how you stuck with that problem. You persevered versus saying, wow, you got the right answer. You're really smart, or you're really good at math. We really want to communicate that we believe in our kids and that they can learn from each other. We're not the keeper of knowledge. We want to make sure that we're giving kids just right math problems, just like we want to give them just right books. Not too easy, not frustrational level, but just right where they have to work hard at it, and we need to build their capacity for struggle. And sometimes we need to build our own. We often want to give hints and help kids when they look like they're getting a little stressed, but what we really want that to do is encourage them to keep working at it. Then they get to experience that wonderful, I did it at the end, or aha, I finally understand this, and that's a great feeling. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable to get to that celebration moment. I'm going to stop sharing. And I think we need to wrap up. But if there's any quick questions, or we can just put out there that Courtney and I would be happy to answer any questions or share anything with you if you want to contact us at any time, summer or school. and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you do any of this work and you want to give us some feedback on how it went, we'd love to hear from you. If anyone wants to unmute and say anything, feel free. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully it was something that was a strong interest in you to give it a try. I think our kids have really benefited from it. And I would say most of the teachers at Proctor had tried it this past school year and really, really liked it. So I'd encourage you to at least explore the website. There's lots of other great things there. This is just a small piece of her work.
The All Learners Network has a lot of similar stuff that you can pick from too as well, which is a great resource if anyone doesn't know about that.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. It is great. They have a lot of launch ideas there and fabulous things. That's where we get a lot of the work that we do. We work with Sandy Stanhope as a consultant. And so like the problem introduction protocol, they have one there if you wanted to look for that. And Courtney's also used the 3 reads protocol and likes that. So yeah, lots of things out there.
Sandy's an amazing resource as well. Holy moly. I took a class with her and I will always take one when it's available.
Yeah.
Hey, Cindy, I just caught the tail end. Our fire alarm actually just went off. What were you saying was a great resource?
All Learners Network.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've used that before, but I'm going to write it down.
All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. Happy summer.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.